What is going on, guys? Jeff here. Had an old school intro there that I found, and I've been digging through the vaults and I've been looking at some of my older videos and had a few laughs. So I figured I'd do like a reaction video with you guys, kind of talk through some of my very first videos, which eventually led to my most viewed video ever, even currently, and kind of talk through some of the methodologies that I was using then and what I would probably do now. I figured that'd be pretty useful for a lot of folks. So in this video, what we're doing is we are trying to figure out our 90-gallon aquarium. And without further ado, let's jump into it.
This is my 90-gallon. Right now I'm trying to figure out how to set up the filtration. I got a leak down here. I'm gonna have to reseal. And what I'm trying to do is figure out the filtration.
So that right there is a knockoff of a CPR Overflow. And what I liked about it is it didn't use YouTubes. That's what I'm not talking about YouTube. I'm talking about the YouTube. Basically, it's like a horseshoe-shaped tube that would go from the front section of the overflow to the back and then eventually go through the drain. And a lot of times with those, you can actually have air pockets built up in them. And what I liked about this one is you could actually hook up a aqua. What is it? Aqua? No, it was a aqua lifter from Tom's. I don't know if it's made anymore. If anybody's making those, but they were incredibly useful pumps which pulled water, and it would pull water in and then send it out. You had this little attachment on the top. You'd put it in there, and it would constantly just pull water through it, so air never got in there because sometimes air would flow through that piece of acrylic. And one thing that I will say about this type of overflow is where it doesn't have two drains, it's a recipe for disaster because there's a good chance that if that drain were to ever to become clogged, that you're going to have a big mess on your hands. That return pump is going to keep pushing water up, and it's not draining, so it's going to end up on the floor.
That's a siphon overflow box, and this is my return. And what's happening right now is when the water comes into here, if that hose is not getting enough air, this hose right here, it's gargling like crazy. And
I would never use flex tube for a drain nowadays. I'd hard line it all.
So I'm gonna hook it up, get it going, give you an idea of the sound that's making and how I'm gonna go about fixing it. Okay, the pump's going. Pumping up pretty good, but as you can hear,
pretty loud.
Suffering for air pretty bad. So it's the pipe right there that I had to go.
It's not suffering; it's getting too much.
It's exposed. It stops making that sucking sound up here in the overflow. Then I got an issue of water splashing all over the place. And so what I'm going to do, what my plan is, is to, instead of using the poly hose, I'm going to use PVC piping. I'm going to build a smokestack up to about here to make sure that it's getting air.
What's interesting about that smokestack idea is I actually just had a gentleman in the store this week, and we were talking about overflows, and he mentioned the smokestack, not necessarily by that term, but he was talking on a two-drain overflow that if you had one that was completely wide open and then using the smokestack and having it exposed above the water line, that in a lot of cases, when you put a cap on that, drill a hole in the cap, that it's going to silence. I've never tried that, but essentially that's what I did here in this video. And because I didn't have a 2-drain system, I had to tee off from the overflow box, go up above the overflow, and then run the drain line down.
Hopefully that will eliminate the sucking sound.
And I have no idea where that information or thought came from. Because obviously I didn't have it, I wasn't testing it, it was just something I was going to try. Must have been some type of thought behind it.
One of the best overflows that you can get right there.
Right there. Best overflow you can get right there.
Have a siphon air pump, and it sucks the air.
Siphon air pump.
Like if your power shuts off,
Aqua lifter.
And your pump kicks back on, it doesn't overflow with so you end up with a wet floor. The only problem is the way that I have this set up. As soon as that pump kicks off, that the return pump sucks the water.
It's a back siphon, essentially. So for those of you that are looking to mess with your first sump and you're dealing with something like that, when the event of a power outage or if you shut the pump off, you're going to have a back siphon if you have that plumbing too far below the water line. A way that you can get away from that is to drill a hole somewhere above the water line so water actually shoots out of it, and you want to make sure that's going to go in a direction that's not going to cause problems. But like, I can't really point it out to you. I guess I can try. Just above that T, there's a little piece of PVC that connects it to the elbow. I would drill a hole, maybe 2 holes right there that are shooting into the tank, and that should prevent back siphoning, because as soon as that hits air, it's going to break that siphon, and you're not going to have it drain back into your sump.
Back down into the refugium. So I'm going to hook that up, see how that works, and we'll go from there. Okay, so this is what I came up with. I got
so much air.
My return pipe right there. I was using a hose, PVC hose, but when it would bounce up past the water line, it would gargle like unreal. It's making quite a bit of noise still, quite a bit of bubbles, but
I didn't fix anything.
I think that's a lot better than what I was doing. My pump, my valve, my pump, just
we didn't have DC pumps back then,
keep
folks.
My water level correct, give it a little resistance. There's a tank. There is the overflow. It's my return pipe. I tilt it up a little bit so it doesn't suck all the water out of the tank. And here is what I came up with. A little paper stuffed up in there, because when I take that paper out, it's still...
The paper is a very, very important part of this DIY. DIY.
It's a continuous sucking. I think I'll take a cap and just put like a thin slit in there. Or even just leave it like that, I guess. I don't...
A cap with a drilled hole would probably fix that, but I think I wanted to leave it. I think it might have, if the hole size wasn't right, I think that's why I didn't go that route. But the paper, ingenuity.
Still being able to suck air, but it's muffled. Use a little bit of the hose there to connect the two, because they weren't exactly the same size.
And that right there, I don't think any of that is glued or clamped or anything. Even like the insert that, because I'm pretty certain that that's not the design of that bulkhead where it has the elbow coming out of it. I think that thing's just stuffed up in there. There's no way that I glued it. I wonder if I glued any of this. Probably didn't at that point, and I didn't really care because I hadn't moved it into the house, but eventually I would have to definitely glue that. But I probably, wouldn't have used the hose. I probably would have just got the plumbing parts that I needed and hardline the whole thing, and then support the plumbing with hangers and that sort of thing, so it's not like bouncing around or moving around at all.
Has a little T, goes up, smokestack, comes down,
Smokestack.
a couple elbows, and then you have it. I can definitely live with that a lot better than what it was before. I'll just have to go through and seal up my connectors.
Seal
just
up
everywhere that's
right. So it wasn't
hanging
good
over the back, so I don't get a wet floor. And that's it. I don't know if you could tell, but this siding stuff right here.
I'm not going to get into that too much. I go and start talking about the oak finish on it. I hate oak finish still to this day. And this was a used tank that I picked up, and I spray painted the trim so I didn't have to look at the oak. And my thought process on that was like, it's going to look like sand if I get that done just right. So also, I think I painted the background on that, but I did it while the tank was filled, which condensation, not your friend. So that video right there was me trying to figure out the plumbing and get that situated before I moved it in the house. And really, at that point in time, I didn't hear much about people doing wet runs with their tank, but that was definitely probably one of the smartest things that I did in that video was just not set it up in the house. Obviously, being a used tank, you want to make sure that it's watertight before you set it up. And getting the plumbing figured out, even though that's not what I would do today, I definitely would have a 2-drain overflow system. I'm still not a fan of drilling tanks, and I would probably, I'll get into that in a little bit more detail because this next clip is from my most downloaded video of all time.
Not in my house.
Wait a minute. All right, let's go back. So if you folks ever wonder what I look like without a beard, that's it. That was a big upper lip. I haven't seen that much upper lip in a long time. All right.
Not in my house.
Great intro.
It puts the Stockman on, or it gets the hose again.
So $7.55. I bet if you were to recreate that today, it'd probably be close to $30. Did the trick. For sure.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jeff for MadHatReef.com, and today we're going to be working on building a Stockman standpipe for your.
All right, so already better video quality. This is the difference between that first video, which was like my very first video, and now you got about 2 years. I don't know how many videos I put up between that time, but obviously a little bit more comfortable with the camera, better. Well, I think it's more consistent with what I sound like today. Obviously I don't know what happened in them 2 years, but definitely a lot more comfortable and a little bit more steady hand for sure.
For this project, you're going to need a length of PVC. You're going to want to make sure it's going to fit within your overflow. In this case, I needed a 1-inch pipe to go inside the baffle that is already installed into the overflow. You're going to need a 1.25 inch coupling. You're going to need a 1-inch cap, and you're going to need an 1.25 inch repair coupling. And these guys, you don't necessarily need this piece, you just need that little black gasket that's inside it. I think it's like $3 for that piece, so it kind of stinks. You can't just buy.
Probably more like $10 today. Before we get too far into this, there's a much simpler way that I'll cover on how to achieve this but there's still definitely, this is a very good looking overbuilt version of how to do this anyways.
The gasket, or at least at my local hardware store I can buy it. So that's all you need to build a Stockman. Now we're going to go get some measurements for our cut. So I'm going to put about an inch of that pipe inside that bulkhead.
Probably wouldn't use measuring tape today. I would just stick the pipe in there, make a mark, and then cut it. Obviously, attention to detail is a good thing.
And I'm going to want to get it over. It's really hard to see because this plastic is just so dirty right now. So I'm looking at probably about a 4-inch. You can kind of see it there. You see that little line across the back wall right there? That's where the water is going to be coming into this back chamber and the overflow. And I'm going to want my pipe to go probably about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch past that. So we're looking at about a 5-inch cut. So now that I have my
I'm using a saw. Yeah, you got the tool that you have is better than the tool that you don't have. I would just use a PVC cutter nowadays. This is rugged. That's going to make a really, really good cut.
measurement on how tall my pipe needs to be, I'm going to make my cut. Here I am taking apart the repair coupling so I can get the rubber washer out from it. Now I'm going to place together the Stockman, kind of like a dry run, so I can get a better idea of where I need to drill the pipe that's going to be on the inside, so I can make some marks. Okay, now that I have it all together, I'm
Looks pretty good minus that cut on the bottom.
grabbing my Sharpie and I'm going to make a few marks to where the slip coupling actually covers on the pipe. And with the space between the rubber gasket and the lines is where I'm going to drill my holes so the water can actually enter into the pipe. There's nothing fancy about how I went about drilling this.
That's probably what I should have named the channel way back in the day. Nothing fancy reefing.
Pretty much peppered
Nothing
that
fancy.
space with drill holes. Like I said it before, nothing fancy with drilling the holes. Just wanted to get the job done. Now the way that the Stockman works is the slip coupling sits on top of that rubber gasket and it creates a space between the pipe and the coupling, and the water comes up through that space and down into the pipe, and what it's doing is not allowing
Must have hands up,
air
boy.
to go into the pipe at the same time. Right here I am drilling a hole in the cap, and I will show you why I'm doing that in a little bit. The PVC pieces that I'm putting the Stockman into is kind of a quick disconnect that I made that I didn't end up
Building a
using.
potato gun.
So now I need to fill up the tank and the overflow and get this baby rocking.
Overbuilt.
Alright, so this is why I drilled a hole in the top of that cap. Watch the water level as soon as I put my finger over the top of it.
It's magic.
It actually increases the amount of water that it pulls with that hole being covered. So this is where a valve comes into play. What we're going to do is we're going to take any valve that you have kicking around, or you can go to the store and pick one up. This is one that I just had laying around. We don't need the second valve, so we're going to completely close that off. But we're going to take some airline tubing, put it in the hole, and we'll be able to dial in that Stockman to be
Honestly, just as it is, it seems like it's doing a pretty good job. You can kind of see that I still have the drop down to the T and the smokestack going on, which I'm sure is also contributing to making that a little bit quieter. But the Stockman that I'm building here is obviously overbuilt, and you can do it much easier. And actually, with the 220 gallon, because I got an Overflow that came with that, another used tank. That one had the U tubes, and it had 2 U tubes and 2 drains, so it was a much better setup. But unfortunately, because it was so narrow in the back, that I wasn't able to put 2 Stockmans in there. And I think I was trying to do dorsals as well, and I was like, this isn't going to work. And what I ended up doing out of frustration is I just bought big caps and threw them on the drain without even like a standpipe or anything, and it worked. There was no uh, air valve that was needed, no, repair coupling, none of that stuff. And the price difference, obviously, between this setup nowadays and just buying 2 oversized caps and putting them in there and drilling a hole is substantial. So that'd be how I would do it today, as opposed to what I did here. Although that this is a very is minus the cutting, it's a very good looking Stockman standpipe.
A little bit faster and even a little bit more quiet. So I got the airline tubing coming out of the hole in the cap, going to the valve, and I adjusted the valve just right so I could get the most amount of water pull out of the overflow without it making any type of sucking for air sound. It's a pretty quick fix. A lot of these newer overflows that are coming out today do have these standpipes already built into them, but it never hurts to be able to make this stuff on your own, especially if you're doing your own overflow boxes. So that is the Stockman in a nutshell. Alright guys, so I'll see you.
So that's my most downloaded video ever, the Stockman standpipe. I'm not sure if I labeled the video that, but I'll put links to both these videos if you want to go check them out. But there isn't much to more of them anyways than what we watched here. So obviously, the difference between 2012 Jeff to 2023 Jeff, and I'm sure, in another 10 years I can come back here and critiquing me. But methodologies change over your time in doing anything, and this period of reef keeping for me was very experimental. I was trying a lot of different. I was building surge devices. I was building dorsal standpipes, Stockman standpipes, screwing with plumbing, and trying to figure all that out. And my basement turned into just a big giant experiment, and it basically paved the road for who I am as a hobbyist and also a business owner today. The years and years of just tinkering and messing with stuff and figuring it out. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, if you want to see more of these, let's get some likes going. Let's see if we can hit 250 likes. If we can get 250 likes, I will make another version of these videos. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, hit the thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you again next time right here. Peace.